Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Astro Read. We are your hosts, Nayeli and Stella. And the Astro Read podcast is all about astrology, celebrity news, and how to use astrology in your everyday life.
Yes, and welcome back to our subscribers, and hello to all our new viewers that are tuning in today. If you're new and you'd like to like our content, please feel free to subscribe. Our goal is to reach 100 subscribers by the end of 2022 and beyond. And continuing to gain subscribers, it really allows us to continue making the content that we're making. And your comments really help us in guiding our ideas and what we will post in the future. So feel free to suggest topics. We are open to your suggestions.
Okay. Yeah, so let's kickstart this episode. So this episode will be all about the modern state of dating, and we're going to tie it into some astrological transits that have been happening the past few years. So Stella, feel free to speak more about this because you really have gotten some really good insights that we're going to talk about today.
So right now we're dealing as a generation with the Uranus in Taurus transit, which I'm sure a lot of you, if you're into astrology, you've heard of the Uranus and Saturn square that was happening at the end of last year, and we're sort of getting away from, and it was very intense. But really what we're seeing generationally with this Uranus and Taurus transit is a generation full of angst about what was happening when Uranus was in Aries, and we were more precarious, less sort of concentrated on the feelings of the partners that we were attracting. We were less sort of worried about the way that we were affecting those that we were in partnership with. I've gone back and I've done some research and seen some of the trends that were going on during Uranus and Aries, and we can go back to the creation of a lot of online dating apps, ones that we're now sort of griping about all over the internet. Why is, Tinder such a hard place for men to really find someone? Why are women feeling like they're disconnected from their male partnerships? And sort of how the contracts that we had before under Uranus and Aries as a society, how we were connecting was sort of a less connection on the basis of, emotion like we need under this transit of Uranus and Taurus, and more based on our, less consequential actions, less sort of concentrated on the way we were feeling about, the person in front of us, and more like the technology we were using. We were excited about that technology. We were excited about having these easy connections that we could just hook up and, meet and greet, sort of, you know what I mean? Yeah. Where it wasn't really connecting on a deeper level. If you think about Aries as a sign, it's more about the introduction. It's more about the start of things and not really finishing up. So it's not really going to complete or feel complete if we're still focused on that Uranus and Aries energy. And it could be more of an e-harmony that we need, or maybe even redeveloping the social contracts we have with some of the internet interactions that we're having in relationships, because that's really what's guiding this sort of experience that we're having. And, especially when it comes to how we'll be dealing with it in the future, we sort of might go into more of a more stable relationships financially as well. We're sort of leaving this idea that we need to be with someone who's sort of very wealthy. There has to be depth to them. Although there is the dark side of Uranus and Taurus, where we might look at, status and wealth as something very positive, because we might want that stability, but it won't be coming out of a superficial sort of area where it's like it looks good. It will be more of a, stable relationship. We're looking for, men and women who can provide stable relationships to us. And it's not in that superficial gold digging way. It's more in that way that we're looking for stability. So that's going to be interesting to see how that develops. I mean, what do you think, Nayeli?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was going through the notes that we had for today's episode, it made a lot of sense with my own life. And to give a sense of time frame for the audience, Uranus in transit within Taurus. So Uranus entered Taurus March 2019, and it'll be in the sign until April 2026. So Uranus changes signs about every 7 years. So that means Uranus in Aries happened around probably 2012 until like very early 2019. And like you mentioned, that was around the time that Tinder came up. Tinder launched in 2012. And with Uranus and Aries, it was just a time where unexpected things probably happened, but it was very much about just going for things, initiating, but not necessarily building something to last. And I could definitely see that playing out in my dating life during 2012 to 2019. Just, things started, but they didn't really like go anywhere. Maybe it's almost like a flame, like it ignites, but then it eventually goes out. And then now with Uranus and Taurus, with that transit starting in 2019, I think people are really disillusioned with the apps, people still use them. And I think we've needed to use them more during the pandemic with social distancing more in play. But yeah, I think people are more disillusioned. I think, people want to have something that's real. It may not be as a parent, I think the perception of dating out there is still very much kind of the hookup scene, and it's hard to find something that's for real and things like that. But I think secretly, when you do talk to people, I think a lot of people out there are kind of tired of the whole Aries style of dating. And they want something a little more real. It's interesting having Uranus and Taurus, because of the signs and the orders of the signs, this Uranus and Taurus era of 2019 to 2026 is between Uranus and Aries. And it's going, and also in between Uranus and Gemini. So I think, both Aries and Gemini are signs that aren't necessarily about the typical, like, I don't know, I guess a traditional, typical committed relationship as we know it. So we're coming off of Uranus and Aries, which is all about igniting things that don't really last. And then we're entering the phase of Uranus and Gemini, which is about exploration, and not necessarily sticking to one partner at times. So we're kind of in this in-between stage where we're reflecting on the era we were in before, and what's to come, and what does that mean? And I think that'll define what the next era of Uranus is, which will start in April 2026, and how that looks like for dating. And yeah, it's interesting how the Uranus placement could be applied to dating. Uranus is the planet that's about the unexpected. It's the planet of the unexpected, sometimes the unconventional, and, the dating scene definitely has evolved, throughout generations. And looking at the Uranus placement can really tell a lot about why society is feeling a certain way about the dating scene.
Yeah, for sure. And just to go back, if we look at the Uranus transit in the 1900s, and we look at the 1936, 1940 Uranus and Taurus transit, that generation that was born during that time, that experience really established, that traditional wife at home sort of experience. Because really this idea that women were to be in the home was really a 1900s experience exclusive. Yes, it was happening before, but it wasn't really like women were doing things like, you know what I mean? Like this traditional at-home thing. And we broke down that expectation throughout the 1900s, headed into the 1970s when Uranus was in Libra. And we finally had the women's movement, the liberation, the establishment of the abortion and birth, all of the rights that women had in terms of their physical bodies. And then moving all the way up until now that we are in Taurus, we're going to probably, again, reestablish the rules of dating. We're going to reestablish the rules that we're going to be set for maybe the next century in how people do. And then our next generation, our Geminis, our Uranus births after that, and rebirths and experiences after that are going to be breaking down what we established during this time. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see like how long I live to see all this happen. But it's very cool that we have the opportunity now that Uranus is in Taurus to establish and set the rules. I mean, we think about it, it's the earth sign energy of really establishing things, of putting things down on paper, of making decisions, and sort of what we decide now. Our next few Uranus expressions are going to then break down, are going to decide if it's worth experiencing. You know, we've already broken the idea of maybe established marriage principles where our parents used to pick our relationships, and then we broke down where we had to be in relationships, and now we're establishing, do we need marriages? You know what I'm saying? Do we even need to be monogamous? Those are the questions that we're asking, and maybe our Uranus and Gemini expression is going to be polyamory, like you were saying before, if you want to go more into that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, the Uranus and Gemini era will start in 2026. And I think that it's going to bring, I personally think it's going to bring more of a prominence with polyamory. I think there's already that influence happening behind the scenes right now in this era, in this Uranus and Taurus era. But I think it's going to take a few more years until the Gemini era to like really put it out in the forefront. And, you know, something we were talking about before is, you know, how will that look like? Like, it'll be, you know, it could be more of a focus on polyamory and that becoming more accepted in society. But instead of it being in the Aries, you know, in the Aries influence of just people kind of, you know, doing polyamory and dating different people and there not being an intention behind it. I think with the Uranus and Gemini era, it'll bring more of an intention. So, you know, polyamory will become more in the forefront, but there will be more resources out there that can help people have healthier polyamorous relationships and help them, you know, find resources that can help them decide, okay, well, I'm polyamorous. How does that look like? How do I approach it? You know, and Gemini is associated with the planet Mercury, with Mercury being the ruling planet of Gemini, and Mercury rules communication. And so that could mean that there's more resources out there, whether it's podcasts or books or influencers that end up talking more about polyamory and really bring it to the forefront. There's an Instagram account that I follow. It's called Pursuit of Poly. So I highly recommend it to anybody that's exploring polyamory, is polyamorous. And it's an Instagram account, it's this couple, and they're polyamorous and they're looking for their third partner. And they share just their tips on how to have a healthy polyamorous relationships, whether it's communicating needs or how to deal with jealousy or just other things like that. And then there's been podcasts I've been listening to where the topic of open relationships or polyamory comes up. And even though I'm not polyamorous, it's nice to see that those conversations are happening, because when you think of monogamous relationships, there's all these resources out there. There's relationship books, there's, you know, podcasts or shows about dating advice, you know, YouTube channels about it. Like, you name the resource and there's probably, you know, some outlets out there that are about dating advice, but it's always about the monogamous dating situation, whether it's same sex or heterosexual, right? And you really don't see a lot of resources out there about how to conduct yourself in a polyamorous relationship. And I think that's really a disservice to people that, you know, fall along those lines of how they love and how they date. I mean, polyamory, it's not a new concept. It's been around since forever. Like, I'm sure in ancient times, polyamory was happening, probably even more so in the forefront than what it is now. But unfortunately, you know, people that fall into that line of love, they don't have the resources out there to really do it in the healthiest way for them or to know what it really is. So I think because of that, I'm sure that a lot of people that are either interested in dating that way or are naturally inclined to do so, they probably are more easily taken advantage of because they don't know what's healthy, what's not. I mean, if you think about it from a monogamous relationship, somebody that maybe didn't grow up seeing healthy relationship patterns or just is kind of green when it comes to dating, even in a monogamous situation, you know, that type of person can be taken advantage of and maybe enter unhealthy relationships. So the very same thing could happen to somebody that's polyamorous. And I think resources do need to be out there more to help those people really have the best relationships they can have. And through that, I think polyamory will become more mainstream and more accepted. So I think that is what the Uranus and Gemini era will bring starting in 2026. I mean, time will tell to see how that looks like, but that's what I can anticipate.
Yeah, and I just think about, the dark side of the Uranus and Taurus transit, and it's like it could bring about, this idea of men's rights and this idea of the unhealthy masculine energy. But it could also bring about a revolution for how men perceive relationships, for how they're contracted within it. It's not just, oh, it's a Taurus is a feminine sign, so it's only going to affect females. Men's effects in their approach to love. They're seeing an unfair advantage within the dating sites that we have set up during Uranus and Aries. They're seeing a sort of revolution of not being accepted within society because of more conservative views. Not that I agree or disagree with it. This is not a political, statement, but this is a new approach to love. What does it mean when your beliefs are not in alignment with maybe the entire female class? And what does it mean when we're so divided as genders? Will we come together under the Uranus and Taurus transit? Will our agreements within our society come together to balance the male and the female energy and the perspectives? And then luckily, and the blessing of this transit and of all of the things happening right now is that Neptune is in Pisces. So, I feel it's going to bring about, some sort of reevaluation of our inner, subconscious. You already see it happening when people are realizing, what are the triggers within me that make my relationships break down? Why am I constantly getting divorced? Why can't I attract people are in alignment with what I desire? You know what I mean? And just bringing about a knowledge and an awareness of the toxicity within ourselves and within our relationships. And, although it can sort of illuminate, it can also bring about delusion. So, there's also a dark side to the Pisces that we might not be able to overcome our inner demons. We might accept those demons as we're seeing people are just getting more and more angry, and they're okay with the delusions that they're under. They're accepting they're crazy.
Yeah.
And it's, it's fine if you're cool with it, but if you're trying to get to a destination and somebody's on the bus terminal having a breakdown and calling the police, like, it's not necessarily societally well. Our society sort of gives into its own illusions as Neptune is in Pisces. But what is the blessing is if we do lean into it, if we do look for healing, it is available. So that's why I always like to give people the two options. Like, you can continue to be sick. You have that option, but the energy is here to allow you to break down those maybe conservative views that you've had, or those, you're stuck in your own ways, the way that you view the world and others. Even if maybe you're too liberal and you're feeling too much like you're able to do whatever you want, as opposed to being a part of a greater society. We're seeing a lot of craziness going on, and these are the transits generationally that are affecting us. And in our dating lives, it's affecting us on a level where we're not able to come to terms with what the female and male role is. And luckily, we're in the sign of Venus with Uranus and Venus. I'm sorry, Uranus and Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. So we're able to sort of come to terms with that equilibrium. Under Libra, for example, when Uranus was in Libra, we had a lot of that strong female attribute, which was very much more masculine, and that masculine energy of Libra. Now we get to be in the feminine sign, in the feminine aspect, which is more about the harmony that we have. And, Neptune in Pisces also brings about a sense of harmony within the society, and looking at the society as a whole and the benefit of creating a more cohesive society. Yes, it will come with growing pains, like maybe, Tinder is not the right app to use. You're looking for
I think some people are over it.
Right. But it will also come with the benefit of being able to break apart our illusions between the sexes, break apart our delusions between our society and ourselves, and to be able to grow as a generation and really evolve the human race towards a more equal partnership between men and women, and hopefully let go of the dark side of polyamory and the dark side of relationships, where it's, you know, the polyamorous relationships that are most popular are male dominated, where it's a lot of men who sort of have the control of the household and can have multiple wives, for example. Maybe there will be a polyamorous revolution for women. Maybe men will be more accepting of that. Or on the flip side, maybe monogamous relationships will have to go through more scrutinous tests. You know, like when I do synastry, I'm not just looking at Venus, I'm looking at Chiron. Like, what are the wounds that this person has? Are they evolved enough to be in a relationship? You know, and it doesn't come from reading the astrology. It comes from learning what the astrology is and then asking the person, like, hey, how do you feel about such and such thing? You know what I mean? And it really does help the partner to make an informed decision based on astrology that they can then use to, is this person right for me? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Kind of looking deeper. And interestingly enough, Uranus will change signs into Gemini, and Neptune will change signs into Aries in 2026. So 2026 is going to be like the start of a new era for different things. Yeah, but especially for how dating will look like. And, you know, in regards to the apps, like you were mentioning, Stella, you were saying, you know, people are getting disillusioned with Tinder. And I think that there could be an emergence of dating apps that dig in a little bit deeper than just, oh, this is somebody's picture and like a little blurb, and you either swipe right or swipe left. An example that's already emerging and may take off by 2026, it might take that long, another 4 years, is there's the app called The Pattern. So you may have used it. Some of the audience members may know of it, may not. But basically with The Pattern, you put in your birth date, location of birth, time of birth, and it tells you what your pattern is. They don't mention astrology, but it's pretty much based on astrology. They just don't use that wording. And recently The Pattern launched a dating component to it, and it's called Connect. And so somebody who makes their dating profile on this app, on The Pattern, it takes into account their pattern. And when you come upon another person's profile, you know, it'll tell you if you and the person are a good match based on both of your patterns. So the outside of it, like when you're using Connect, which is part of The Pattern, it looks like your typical dating app. Basically, it looks like a Tinder. Like you see the picture, you either swipe right or swipe left, but the added component is that it'll give you an indication of whether you would be a good match with that person. So it's sort of like a mesh of Tinder and eHarmony. It's like, you know, the efficiency of Tinder, where you can just quickly swipe right, swipe left, with a little bit of the depth of an eHarmony without having like the arduous 100-question questionnaire to fill out of eHarmony. So, you know, I think that could be, you know, dating apps may move into that direction. Connect isn't really that popular yet. I've used it, you know, a few months ago, and there wasn't that many people on there. I think a lot of people don't know about it, but I think more and more people will find out about this app, especially as more and more people get disillusioned with the Tinders. I mean, there's also Bumble, which has a little more depth than Tinder, but not by much, right? I think people are going to start getting tired of the typical dating apps, and they're going to look for an added component that can give somebody an extra indication of, okay, this person looks nice, their blurbs, it makes them sound like a good person, but are we a match based on like a deeper level? And so that'll be the trend. So starting in 2026, we'll have Uranus in Gemini, which is all about exploration, possibly the emergence of polyamory. And then we'll have Neptune in Aries, which I think is such an interesting placement. And I think a placement where Neptune doesn't really feel at home. So right now, Neptune, you're like, absolutely not. So 2026 will be an interesting ride. But
I'm going to say a hot mess.
A hot mess. So this is like the calm before the hot mess of dating. It might get worse, guys. Like, so right now, Neptune, like buckle up. So Neptune right now is at home in Pisces. You know, it's been in Pisces since about 2011, 2012. and it'll be there until 2026. So like you were saying, Stella, it's people are going to start to think about, okay, their inner selves, like what are their wounds, like what's their subconscious, like what's their take on spirituality, really looking at what's underneath. And that's really what the planet and sign of Pisces can be all about. It's also Neptune and Pisces are also a planet and sign that's about artistry and really letting out your art, your whether it's singing, music, painting, whatever the case may be. So Neptune is really in its happy place right now, and it's allowing us to like dig in deeper. And it's interesting that most of the Neptune in Pisces, well, not most, but I would say half of the Neptune in Pisces transit, or close to half, has been during the pandemic era, right? So a time where we have been more isolated. And Pisces is a 12th sign. Neptune is one of the like furthest planets, right? So both Neptune and Pisces are also about solitude and isolation, and that kind of being the catalyst for self-awareness and really getting to know yourself. And so that has been a theme that has happened for people around the pandemic, around this era of the pandemic, where we've been more socially isolated, and that has forced us to really look at ourselves and think about, okay, am I in the right job? Am I in the right relationship? I mean, there's been so many quarantine breakups and makeups that have happened. It's really forced people to think about, okay, am I in the right situation? And so once Neptune goes into Aries in 2026, who knows where we will be in regards to the pandemic, if we'll still be socially isolating. Hopefully not. Hopefully by then we're a little bit further along, but who knows? But it'll definitely be more of a different era. And I think then it'll be interesting to see, because Aries is a sign that's very go, 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 but may not be the most self-aware sign. Like they kind of are what they are, right? Like this is who I am and this is it, no apologies. And so I think after this Neptune and Pisces era of like self-awareness and like isolation and digging in deep, in 2026, we're going to be so over that and just like ready to go. Like this is who I am. This is who I've discovered I am. And now I'm not going to think anymore about it, and I'm going to go. And I wonder how that'll affect the dating scene, in 2026 moving onward. It's like, how do you think it will affect it, Stella?
So I think that Neptune and Aries is going to be a time, like you said, an individualist sort of energy. We've come out of the Neptune and Pisces of reflection, and you're going to have to accept me for who I am type of energy, and then that's why it's so important for us during this Neptune and Pisces era to really heal ourselves, because the person that comes out of this time, that's who you will be. So you want to really take advantage and heal yourself up. And what I was really thinking to help those who are trying to survive these two transits generationally, like first, in terms of Neptune and Pisces, it's time for you to look deeper into yourself and to decide what it is and who it is that you are and what your wounds are. Whether it's through astrology or through therapy or through self-exploration, do something to make yourself whole, because you're getting that opportunity, and not every generation gets the opportunity. Not every person living gets the opportunity to live during this transit of Neptune and Pisces. So this is the time to heal up and to break apart your illusions, not dig into your delusions, right? Break apart illusions, don't dig into delusion. I love
that. I love that.
So, that's your first level one of your survival of dating and trying to find a partner. The second is Uranus in Taurus transit, and just looking for more depth in your life, whether it's through your wealth, your job, your personality. Look at your astrological chart and see where the Uranus transit is affecting you, and see how it's changing. For example, my Uranus and Taurus is in my 9th house. So I've changed my job, my perspective, and everything to work around being able to explore the world and enjoy the world and study and dig deeper into the subjects that I like. So now I work from home. Now I have my schedule that I control. Now that I do all the things that I do, it works around that Uranus and Taurus transit that's allowing me to further explore who I am and further explore what I'm interested in. You know, and it could be different for every person. It could be Uranus in the second house in Taurus. You know what I'm saying? It just depends on your own. That's why it's good to get an astrology reading to see what is affecting you, and how the planets are affecting you. You know, we don't predict the future. We look at patterns and break it down and help you get to the best result through your astrology. You know, that's what I really feel when I'm as an astrologer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But most importantly, to survive, first, break your illusions and delusions. Second, dig deeper into who you are, dig deeper into what you like and where Uranus and Taurus is moving. And then the third layer is something that we haven't spoken about, which is Saturn in Aquarius. It's so funny that all of this is happening with the backdrop of Saturn in Aquarius, you know, and the great, you know, conjunction that happened earlier, you know, in the end of December. So all of these things are all happening, and Jupiter in Aquarius started us off into thinking deeper for our lives, deeper for ourselves, deeper for our self-worth. And what does it mean to be alive? All of this in the backdrop of actually living through a pandemic. You know what I mean? A once in a generation pandemic, something that maybe 400 years ago would have killed millions and millions and millions and millions of people, maybe a billion people. You know, today we're living through a time where we have enough technology, enough wherewithal, and the ability to work from home. Like, when would, you know, a saw maker from like the 16th century, I don't know, making this up, when would he have been able to just, you know, quarantine and not be able to earn money and survive on his own? Like, we have the capability to do that, which means that our money and our time is worth so much more. So how are you living up to the times that you're in? How are you looking at it? And beyond the depth that we're living, beyond the problems that we have, how are you improving the planet? Because again, Uranus is in Taurus. You know, I think that's going to be very important, and people are underestimating how important saving the planet is going to be in the upcoming elections, in the upcoming ways that we're interacting with each other, in the ways we're going to take care of each other as time goes on. We are underestimating how important it's going to be, and there's going to be a great awakening about this in the coming years. So, you know, like, and then Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini, and that's going to be a whole other problem. But I'm very excited for everyone, because if you are able to heal up, if you're able to break down your delusion and illusions, you can find the right person during this transit. And it could be actually a really solid relationship. You know, and that's what I would work for. If you can find someone before Uranus goes into Gemini, I would say you're in a solid place.
Yeah, that's my goal. Now, hearing like our just thoughts around what the Uranus and Gemini era is going to bring, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I like need to settle down before Uranus and Gemini starts. And I know even if I'm in a relationship at that time, like it'll still be like an interesting time. Things will change, but at least if I can get like the foundation done right now, that would be great. So yeah, it seems like the main piece of advice that we have for those listening to this episode is, you know, this time with Uranus and Taurus, Neptune and Pisces, you know, from now until about 2026. And of course, against the backdrop of Saturn in Aquarius is, you know, find out who you really are. Like, I know that advice is always out there in dating advice and whatnot, like self-awareness, but like now it's like really needed, like astrologically, like this is so necessary for people, like figuring out who you truly are and using tools, whether it's astrology. And, you know, in the description, you can find out more about us if you're interested in getting a reading from either one of us, and knowing what we each do, or, you know, using other means, whether it's therapy or whatever else, or even personality assessments, whatever is at your disposal to really find out who you are, and not only who you are, but like, what do you need in relationship? And so astrology in particular can help with that too. You can learn if you and a love interest are a good match, but also you can learn, individually about yourself. What do you need in a relationship for it to be successful? So this, from now to 2026, it's the time to really know about yourself. And with Taurus, which Uranus is in Taurus right now, Taurus is also the sign about values. Like, what are your values? Like, what values do you live for in life? Like, are you a country or city person? Do you work from home or in the office? Are you going to follow your passion or just have a job be something that you make money out of and that's it? And you clock in and you clock out. Those are things that you should be finding out about yourself, because that will really help you determine who the best partner is for you. And once 2025, 2026 comes about, we're going to have Uranus going into the very exploratory and also open-minded Gemini sign. So I think, the emergence of polyamory for sure. But also I think regardless of whether you lean towards that way or not, it's going to be a time where hopefully people can be more open-minded about the different ways of loving, and I think we've started that in prior eras, and it's just going to expand. And hopefully that will provide acceptance for people to really love in the way they want to. But to do that, you need to know who you are, right? So this time is all about the self-awareness. Neptune is going to be in Aries. Neptune is going to be an unapologetic Aries. So, the inside and the outside, like your inner world and your outer world, there's going to be no boundary. It's just going to be all out there. And then Saturn around 2025 will be leaving Aquarius and kind of for the next few years going through the signs of Pisces and Aries before settling in Taurus for a bit in 2030. But for in starting 2025, Saturn, which is like the taskmaster and like the disciplinarian of the zodiac, is going to be going in unapologetic Aries, but also we're all in this together Pisces. So that is going to be nuts on a like societal level. Like, so during the pandemic, we've had Saturn in Aquarius and Capricorn, which is really about setting structure. If you really think about it, Aquarius is more of like the laid back sign compared to Capricorn, but what they both have in common is how do we live as a society, whether it's in a utilitarian way or a totalitarian way. So we've been like back and forth, but starting in 2025, we're going to be going back and forth in Saturn between Pisces and Aries. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be, are we all in this together and passionate, or is it everybody out for themselves?
Yes.
The Hunger Games era for Saturn. Oh, so we will see how that goes.
So. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, maybe not.
That's definitely a possibility.
I know. Maybe I'm always the dreary one. But regardless of how you view it, it's going to be a time where all the self-awareness and isolation you've had now during the pandemic is going to come really in handy starting in 2025, 2026, because you're really going to need to know who you are to have a successful relationship in the next era, and also to just make it in the world in the next era that we're going in.
Yeah, for sure. And just for those of you out there that are specifically men and single, because I'm seeing this a lot among men, they're struggling with the ideas of what is coming up in the future. And the ones that I've seen most successful are the ones that have overcome the generational issues that have been passed down to them. Mm-hmm. So if you're out there and you're wondering why you're still single, why they won't swipe on you, like there is something inside in your mind, in your psychology, in your psyche that is literally blocking your ability to see the future of where we're going. And if it bothers you, if where we're going bothers you and you're so against it, just think of how many opportunities are passing you by because you're still stuck in 1950. And I mean it. Like we're in Uranus and Taurus, and it might be a more stable sign, but it is a feminine sign. And where we're going in the future matters. So either get with the program or you're going to be single forever. I feel so bad for them. Like I really do. Like you're going to be single forever because you're so stuck with the generational wounds that you won't heal, that you won't face. You know, and it goes for females too, because we're also stuck in this perpetual idea that we need to do everything. We need to do everything. And it's not true.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, it's okay. If you want to work all the time and not have children, it's okay. If
Yeah.
you just want to have pets, even though somebody very high up said that pets are wrong, and I'm not going to say who because I don't want to mention religion in here, but
Yeah.
you know who it is that said that pets were wrong. I don't understand. Well, if you want to have pets, have pets.
Yeah. Yeah. Just do what you want.
It's just so funny. Like
Yeah.
we're in an era under the age of, Saturn and Aquarius where people want to do whatever they freaking want
Yeah.
and be who they want to be. And if you don't figure out who you want to be before the end of that era, you're going to be stuck in a way that is like horrible, because that's the problem with astrology. The problem with astrology is if you don't know the patterns that are coming, you can't anticipate the changes that are needed. You're going to stay in a situation where you have a horrible Saturn return, for example. I'm like example number one of that. I ignored all the signs and then everything fell apart.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? Like the signs are out there, the times are changing, and changing with the times allows you to learn more about who you are within the era you're living. We're no longer living in a time where it's acceptable to be controlling to each other, male and female, to be hurtful to each other, to be negative towards each other, to be low vibration, because we're all talking about high vibration. And if she asks you for the date of birth and time, just give it to her. Neptune in Pisces. People
Yeah.
are looking for ways and patterns to connect with each other. They're
Yeah.
looking at astrology and spirituality in a very different way than they did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
400 years ago, when you used to be burned at the stake for even talking about some of the things that we're talking about on this video, and we're living in a new era where not only is it accepted, but it's proven to be helpful to the person that's trying to get into a relationship with you. If they feel that they don't want to deal with Taurus energy, then that's their decision too. They have a right to make that decision. Is it something that maybe could block them from their growth? That's also an option too.
Yeah.
That's up to them. So using astrology, I personally think that by the time we get to Uranus and Aries, we're going to have like some sort of like synastry system where you can just plug in all the information, and it's like a dating app where you plug in your astrology information. Maybe it already exists, and everything that you need to know about your life is going to be there. Everything that you need to know about the person that you're about to date. And then as people put into this pool, you get matched astrologically, and on that level you can start dating. And really the idea that it's just going to be based on a picture, we're going to have to leave behind, because we're also like withering down the intelligence and the ability to be sort of open to different sort of I don't want to say gene pools, but definitely different sort of options that people have, like different looks, different ways people look, because we're being matched with such linear specificity about who is attractive and who is not. You know what I'm saying? And so, yes, maybe in the long run, like some sort of social experiment, it'll be like, we'll be the most beautiful species in the world. I don't know what they're trying to do with this. Like, I think it's stupid. But, at the end of the day, I think that we're going to have to look for deeper ways of matching towards each other. Deeper ways. And in the age of Aquarius, which is what we're stepping into, friendship is probably going to be more important than anything else. So maybe even looking at your friend group, who have you decided is in the friend zone? Like maybe that's the person you're supposed to be with, guys. I'm just throwing it out there as personal advice, not astrological at that point.
For sure. I think this is the time for self-awareness. And I think I wish like a perfect world for me would be everybody knows who they are, everybody knows their patterns, so to speak.
Sure.
And then if they have a love interest, then they do a synastry or they match it up and they kind of know. And that's been so helpful for me. Like, I've gotten some synastry readings from you, Stella, and like it saved me so much time. I think that's what people don't realize. Like, doing some kind of matchup, whether it's through astrology or something else, like using some kind of resource to see how you and the other person matches up, whether it's like knowing your love languages or like doing a synastry reading, it could save so much time because you kind of know what's the matchup. Like, are you and the other person compatible? And nothing is a deal breaker, you know, like a synastry reading is not out there to say, okay, don't even approach this relationship, but at least it gives you an idea of like, what are you getting in yourself into and how to approach it. And that saves so much time. Like I've probably eliminated some dating like options just through the synastry chart. So, you know, so those are some pieces of advice that we would give you, and we'll see how the next few years go. But I think the main pieces of advice to recap before we wrap up, which is know yourself, like really look, you know, I think society will move into matching people deeper than just like somebody's picture. And you know, men and women need to really on a societal level see, okay, what are the patterns that they've had in their archetypes, you know, as the male archetype, the female archetype that's working for us, and what are the patterns and the archetypes that need to be let go of. You know, for example, getting rid of toxic masculinity, you know, women knowing that they can really choose amongst the different options. They don't have to be one thing. They don't have to be the working woman or the stay-at-home mom, or they could be either of those things. Like any option is possible. So those are the tips that we would give you. And we hope you got some insight out of this, of what to expect in modern dating in the next few years, and also some explanation as to why things have been going the way that they have been the last few years. It's really all based on astrology. Like astrology kind of gives the behind the scenes of why things have been going the way they have been going. So that concludes this episode. We hope you have found it helpful, and we have more episodes coming up that will get you geared up for 2022 and beyond. And of course, some more celebrity astrology, because we love that. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Any last words, Stella, before we wrap up?
Again, break down illusion, leave behind delusion. I think that's what I said. But I'm very excited to see what comes about. What do you guys think? And when you apply this, how has it helped you? So please, if you come back to this video in a year and just let us know how it helped you, if it did, because I love synastry. I love to help people with their love lives. Like, it's the best. That's how I found my husband. I swear everything worked astrologically, and it can help you too. So hopefully this is a guide to this time that we're living that's a little bit crazy.
Okay, sounds good. See you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.